Hi, and welcome to the BookishStitcher podcast. My name is Jeanette. You can find me on Ravelry, Instagram, and Goodreads as BookishStitcher, all one word. I hope you guys have had a lovely 2 weeks since I podcasted. This is the first time, I think, on the new schedule of every 2 weeks, so I can have more time to get knitting done because life has a lot more stuff in it right now. So let's get into the knitting. I'm going to start with something that's new. You might have seen it on Instagram, but I know I haven't shown it on the podcast yet because it is Sock Blank September, and I hope you're casting on, if you like sock blanks and you have one, I hope you're casting on a sock blank to share and show people and just, the sock blank love. And I'm going to be drawing for a winner from posts on Instagram occasionally, like once a week throughout the month. Well, I guess I'm already a little bit behind. But I'll be drawing for a winner of somebody to win a pattern of $7 or less of their choice. And then I will post a thread on Ravelry, like a Cal FO/chatter thread, and there will be one grand winner out of that for a sock blank by Open Skies Yarn. And yeah, I think that's everything for the sock blank, but I've posted a couple pictures of this one online, and it is on Instagram, and it is in, it's not really living in a project bag, it's kind of living underneath a Harry Potter illustrated copy, and I just keep the sock blank under there and knit from it as I read. But I wanted to have it in a bag to show you guys, and I wanted to put something in this bag for a while because it is about to be fall. We're having some fall-like weather in the mornings here in Texas, which is lovely. It's going to warm back up, but I'm enjoying it immensely while it's here, which is kind of what you have to do when you live in Texas and you love the colder weather. And so this is a bird legs bag, and it has little fall foliage, which I never get to see in real life here, but I enjoy seeing it on fabrics and different things on the computer. I will watch stuff that in the wintertime I will watch on Netflix, like those videos of snow falling. I am the person that watches those. But it has a little owl as the bead, and then there are little owls all over it and little turtles with apples on their back. And in here is my sock blank that I am doing for Sock Blank September, and it is my oldest sock blank that I've had. I've been wanting to knit it for a while, but I felt like it needed to be knit in the fall, and I just kept forgetting around fall time to actually knit it, or I'd already have a lot of other stuff that I was knitting, and the old Jeanette wouldn't have cast on anything because she would have been like, nope, we're not having more than 3 projects on the needles. And now this year's Jeanette is like, ha ha ha, it doesn't matter. So hopefully I'll return to the old Jeanette someday soon so that I can get my mischief managed with my immense amounts of whips. But this is the sock, and you can kind of see probably why it makes me think of fall, and it's called New Leaf. And it was the first one I got, and I got it at an SSK 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago. And there's the Gail's art. She makes beautiful sock blanks, and she's always coming up with new and fun ideas for ones. And she's just the sweetest person. I've met her in person quite a few times, and she has a great down-to-earth, really relaxed and kind personality. And here is my sock, and I love the transition. You've got this deeper purple, really vibrant purple, and then you start to see like a lighter purple and the browns, and then it goes all the way into brown, and I'm about to get into the beautiful leaves, which will have the orange and then the turquoise, and then it'll go back into purple. So I'm going to try to use up as much of this sock blank as I can. I didn't do what I normally do is when I first get them, I fold them in half, and then I put a locking stitch marker in the center, and I just didn't do that because I was so eager to start that I just went ahead and did it. I'm just having some water and one of my husband's Alamo beer, I think it's Alamo, yeah, it's just some brewery that he's been to. It's supposed to be for beer, but I'm just having water. And so, because it's kind of, in the mornings it's really nice, but it's heating back up to where it's not for me right now. I don't want like hot coffee or hot tea, but I am so excited about the days when it's cold enough in the afternoon to enjoy hot coffee and stuff again. So there's my sock blank for Sock Blank September, and the carabiner on that is quite noisy. Put it down here. So then the next thing I have, I should have said that this was my FO, or my half FO, but this is in a Fat Squirrel fiber bag that now needs a good washing because I was cleaning out my car one day and I had my thermos and it had my coffee in it, but I thought I had finished drinking the coffee, and so I was kind of tilting it over, cleaning up the car, and I dumped some coffee on the bag. But yeah, so I have a half finished object. I finished the first sock of this, and my whole goal was that I wanted to use up all but the tiniest little bit of yarn. So there's just, I need to snip it off, but there's just this little bit, and I think it's not even enough for, I know this alone isn't enough for a blanket square, but this plus the little bit from the other sock might be. And I went all the way through the colors, so that was nice. And it's very, very tall. So there's my normal foot size, a size 7, 7.5. But I did some increasing into the sock so that it would fit up really high, and it could be cuffed down to where it could be like this. I really wanted a cozy house sock, so it can be worn down or up, which is just a wonderful way to give your socks lots of options. And so that is the first one done. And then the next one just is barely started. Like, I haven't even finished the toe, but there it is. And this yarn that I'm using for this is some Knit Circus in the Robin's Nest color. And I really love the base of this yarn. It's a lot more than I normally pay for sock yarn, but I really enjoy working with it. And I have it on my Knit Picks. I believe these are the Sunburst needles, and I really enjoy doing this yarn with wooden needles. It just feels very nice. And so that is my other socks. Now, this next one would have been a finished object. Like, the pattern is technically finished, but it was like, you know, bind off now using this. And I was like, I have a lot of yarn left, so I weighed it, and I figured out math-wise that I definitely had enough to do an entire another repeat, if not more. And I was like, I'm not gonna wait, I'm gonna keep going. I'm not gonna like save this much yarn, or it's not gonna be used for something else. It wasn't enough to like do an entire pair of socks or something like that, so I just kept going. And it is in a Frostbeard Studios bag that I absolutely love. And the yarn that I'm using for this is a giant Vice gradient, and this one was an exclusive one for the Hill Country Weavers Retreat 2016 that I got, and it is 150 grams and 600 yards, but I feel like it has a lot more than that because when I originally weighed it, it had more than 150 grams, so I think this is a very generous skein that I got. And I showed it on Instagram, I believe a week ago, where I just barely started the purple. I had like one row of the purple done, but now I have a lot more of the purple, and it's too bunched up on here. I can't really spread it out and show you without risking it falling off the needles. But last time you saw it had just been on this darker green, and now it's impossible to show on the needles, really. But yeah, so there's what it looks like, and I am almost done with this next repeat, and then I will be able to bind off and block it and show it to you properly, because the way it is shaped with the short rows, it rolls under right now as I'm trying to show it to you, but once it's off the needles, that part will lay flat right here. So this will be the top, and it will just kind of lay out like that. And it will definitely, I think, need a shawl pin to kind of hold it up. It's very deep, but it's not as wide, so I'm not sure how it would work without a shawl pin, keeping it on your shoulders, because the shape is also not one that I would think would be ideal for allowing something to sit nicely on your shoulders. And then this is what I have left, just a little bit compared to the giant cake that was at the beginning. And I think there are just 2 more colors. Like I'm on the second to the last color that this encompasses. There's this like royal purple, and then on the inside there's this very deep, like deep eggplant, almost a black purple. And it's a lot of fun to work with and see the colors transition, and it's especially fun when you can see the color that you're about to get to peeking from underneath the current color, and that just kind of motivates you to keep going. And even though it is squiggly yarn, it doesn't bother me because I've been working with sock blinks and stuff, and I especially enjoy that. And also, it being a shawl, it doesn't really matter gauge wise as much as like socks, or if you were trying to knit a garment out of this yarn. Which if you were a very small person, a 600 yards or more would definitely be enough to do. Like a sugar maple, I believe, is one of the patterns that uses a gradient fingering weight yarn. But yeah, so that is my Dotted Rays by Stephen West. I don't know if I said that, but yeah, it's Dotted Rays. And that was one that I started in February, and then it kind of went to the wayside. So I'm picking up my older whips. And then next is my Paloma, which is definitely outgrown its current bag, which is a Fat Squirrel Fibers bag. And in here I have a whole bunch of pieces because it's knit in pieces to give it structural integrity, because this is a bulky weight yarn. I'm using Owool Legacy Bulky in the Rain Cloud colorway. And the Paloma sweater is a design from Baby Cocktails. And you guys have already seen most of this, but this is the back. No, yes, this is the back. And then I did have it nicely folded in there, but I should throw it back in. This is the left front. No, this is the right front. And then I'm currently, now last time I showed it to you, I wasn't done with the right front. So I finished the right front. And then I am to now the shoulder shaping. I have this much, I might have to add in a new ball. I am now to the shoulder shaping on the left front. So I need to start decreasing for the shoulder and then do the V-neck. And this, it's funny about this yarn, it looks like a very narrow panel, but because you add a button band, which adds I think 2 inches, and it's very long right now, so I'm going to block it wide to add width versus length. And so yeah, I'm using my Marbles needles, which I just love these needles so much. I know some people don't like them because they've broken them, but I have never broken any of my ones that I have. And it's just, it does not fit in here very well at all anymore. And then the last thing is so new that it doesn't really have a project bag yet. I'm just swatching because I had hoped to have that, like before I decided to add on extra repeats of the shawl, I thought that it would be done by now, because I think I got to the point on Monday or Tuesday where it said bind off and I decided to keep going. But so this is my next cast on that I'd wanted to do, so I just kind of have been gauge swatching for it because it is a garment and I do like to do gauge swatches on those. And so I am using my oldest yarn. I've been really into this year, like going in on my Goodreads. I've been going and looking what book I've added the longest ago and reading that and kind of going through that list. And I've been thinking that I wanted to apply that same principle to my yarn stash. And I did a couple years ago, I did like a knit your 15 oldest skeins in 2015. So I have some older ones now that I, would like to get to using. And so I grabbed this because it's my oldest one on my Ravelry stash. And it is some Miss Babs Yowza in, I can't remember the colorway name right now, but this is my first time ever using Miss Babs Yowza. And the pattern that I had intended it for was one for me, but then I just decided to knit something for my daughter because she really loves her hand knit sweaters, and I have quite a few, and she outgrows hers seasonally. So she's had some that she's had for 2 years, so they're going to be on their way out, so she kind of needs a new one. And I thought this would be perfect because it's has a cute little detail of a tree and it would be in a color she really likes. So I pulled this out, and since it's my first time using Yowza, it said, I think it says on it that it's worsted weight, so I just assumed it's worsted weight. And I hadn't heard much about it other than that people really liked it. I'd heard some people, I guess, say that it was a lighter worsted, but I didn't get like really how much of a lighter worsted it was, because the old growth pattern for the sweater calls for a size 8. So I cast it on and did a full gauge swatch on a size 8 needle, and it was super loose, like lace. And so then I took that off, pulled out the entire thing, and did a gauge swatch on a 7. Still way too loose for what I, like a winter coat. And because this will be her winter coat, because it doesn't get that cold in Texas to where you need like a giant puffy coat other than once maybe a year. And so, if we're lucky. And so I then moved down to a 6. And I'm thinking that the 6 is a good gauge. So it's not maybe as tight as I would probably normally do it, but I'm thinking going down much more than that. Like I should probably even pick a different pattern. And I've already purchased this pattern, so I want to stick with it. But is my Yowza, and I was holding it up to like a sport weight that I have, and it was about the same as a sport weight. And so I was just wondering if anybody else anyway out there who has worked with Yowza, is that typical that it's that much? I don't even know that I would call it a light worsted just because how thin mine is. Maybe mine is atypical, but it's below a DK weight. And yeah, I don't know. It's super light, and I love how much yardage there is, but I don't know that I would get it again for a worsted weight sweater. I might, like if I wanted to knit like a sport weight sweater or something, get it for that, or maybe a DK, since you can kind of knit it at a 6 and the gauge not be terrible. But yeah, it's definitely not something I will ever use for like a size 8 needle sweater, because it was so wholly lacy, giant open loops. And even this, like, I don't know, I'm wondering if I need to go down to a 5, but that's just what I'm thinking in my mind. So I would love to know if you are a big fan of Yowza and you've worked with it a lot, if this is common and I just need to like adjust for doing different patterns. Or I could see if you were a very tight knitter. I'm normally always about on gauge with about like a medium, I'm normally in the middle. I'm not really loose, but I'm not really tight. I used to be really loose, and I've tightened up my gauge from when I very first started knitting. But I'm not an exceptionally tight knitter. Like I knit my socks on a size 1 needle. I know some people use like a 2.5 for fingering weight, but then I have friends that use zeros or double zeros on their socks, and I'm at a 1. So I think I'm kind of in the middle there. But I would love to know if anybody else has experienced their Yowza being really thin, or if it's just my random 2 that I bought that are super thin and are like sport weight instead of worsted. So yeah, that is all the knitting. And when if that gauge swatch works on the size 6 needles, then I will, do all the math, since I had hoped it was a worsted and I wouldn't have to do math if I got gauge. But now, since I'm using such a smaller needle, I can't get gauge with that yarn on. It's just, I'm gonna have to do a bunch of math and knit a very much larger size than I would have been knitting. So lots of math coming up, but I'm excited to use that yarn because it's been in my stash for so long, probably 3 years. I think I actually got that around when I got the sock blank. I think I got them at the same knitting retreat 3 years ago. So that's all the knitting. And then I haven't done any spinning. I still have the same stuff from Tour de Fleece sitting on my wheel. And that is some fiber optic, but has a very high bamboo content. And I always love a little bit of bamboo or silk in my fiber, but I think it might be too high because it's almost impossible for me to spin it. It's just not holding together at all, and it's kind of clumps, and I don't really know how to manage it. Maybe if I had a carder or something to where I could kind of blend it more, but I don't know. I'm not really sure how to proceed with it as it is right now, and it might need a more expertise or a better spinner than I am. And so that is all of the knitting and spinning. And then for group news, like I said, I will open up a thread for Sock Blank September, and I need to hop on there and see what else has been going on. But the last time I podcasted 2 weeks ago, it was like we were getting ready to go back to school the next day, and it's been a whirlwind since there. My daughter is in kindergarten for the first time. It's been going great, and it has not been going great in different ways. Like, she's been behavioral pretty well, except for a couple days. They have a system how they do it of like letting the kids know how they're behaving, but there is not a restroom in her classroom, and she's used to being able to go to the bathroom whenever she needed, even in her preschool class. And so you have to get permission from the teacher, and there's only certain times that you can go to the restroom. You can't go whenever you need to, and it's been causing a lot of problems and anxiety. And so it's been a rough ride, rough 2 weeks for her, and my son had some injuries from the playground. It's funny, my husband and I were talking about how his school is like, I always, whenever I'm there, I see some kid coming out of the nurse with like something is hurt, because they play soccer like it's rugby on steroids, you know, or hockey or something. The injuries that these kids sustain. Like, he told me one kid, and there's like gravel and rocks around, so one kid had like fallen and embedded the rocks into his knee, and the nurse was having to like pull him out, and then they had to take him, call his parents, and go take him to the urgent care because he needed tons of stitches. And like, it's hardcore playing there. So he's had a rough time of it, and it's been a really it's been a challenging couple of weeks. I almost thought of getting on Instagram and asking for some advice from the other moms out there, but you never know when you post stuff out to like vast numbers of people, if some people are gonna be nice or if some people are going to be like mean about it or different things like that. So I decided to not, just because I was at such a fragile place that if I was trying to ask like for help from friends and somebody was being a troll, then it might have crushed me and made me really down and upset and sad. So I knew to like not go there at that point. But yeah, so for enabling this week, I don't have any yarn or anything like that, kind of like last time, but I do have something to show you, and I'm really excited about it. This is, so it's fall, kind of. I can't decide, it's getting warm, cold, but I'm considering it as fall. And fall for me, autumn, I get to pull out my crock pot, I get to start using that, and then candles. I burn candles almost every single day. As you can see one back there. Well, you can kind of see that it's lit, but I will sometimes burn candles on the podcast all year round, but as far as day-to-day life, if it's in the warmer months, I like to just use like a oil diffuser kind of thing, and then in the fall, winter time, I will use candles because I just love the cozy feeling that they emit. And for me, I don't want to add extra heat in the warmer months, so I only use them during certain times of year. But I have that candle, and it's almost out. And so I stocked up on some candles for the rest of this year, because there was in my owl crate, that box that gives you a book and little goodies, they had featured this company once, and there was like a coupon if you ever ordered again. And I went to go look at their blog periodically, or their website with their shop and stuff. And I was there one day, I think not quite 2 weeks ago, but they had a sale going on because they had decided to keep it to where they had only a catalog of 12 main scents, and then to clearance out all their other scents that they were not going to have in their main catalog. And so I went looking on the clearance one, and they were like half off what I would normally pay for like a Yankee candle or a Bath and Body Works candle or something. And they're adorable. They're Bookish candles. So I got 4 candles. for the rest of the year for my candles, and I've already used one of them a bunch, but this is kind of hard to show you. Frostbeard Studio homemade goods for book nerds. See if I can, whoop, I don't know, it's gonna be, but it's just check out Frostbeard Studio if you love candles. And I don't know if they have any more of their clearance ones or coupons, but it says on the inside, it has a book and it says thank you. And so the one that I've gotten, I've already used because this was our favorite. My kids and I all decided which one we liked the best. And this is Gatsby's Mansion. And The Great Gatsby is one of my very favorite books, and I credit that with a teacher who just, we read it in class my junior year of high school, and she was so inspiring in the way she talked about it. You could tell it was one of her favorite books. And she talked about the green light at the end of the pier. This is a green candle, and she gave us a little jewel bead, fake bead jewel thing that was green, and just talked about what it represented. And I remember just being so inspired, and The Great Gatsby's always been one of my favorite books ever since then. I had to get this candle. And it tells you on the website what the different scents are. I can't remember right now, and it doesn't tell you on the candle. They are Book Lovers Soy candles, and they're handmade in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I actually have an uncle who lives in Minnesota. But this, it just smells almost like fresh cut grass and longing. I don't know. It just, yeah, it smells like, it's a very good Gatsby smell. Like, I wish I could remember what each of the, because they each had like 3 main scents that they were having in them. And then this is probably, my kids and I decided, my least favorite out of the 4. It's called Bookseller. And this is a candle that needs a very specific room. It needs to be, actually a guy that I was engaged to early in college had a room in his house that this candle would have been perfect. It needs a library with he had large built-ins in this study. It was a study library, and it had large giant built-ins, and then these giant plush leather couches everywhere, and just this old oak, very rich and just like decadent study. And so this smells like that. It smells like leather and a bit of like aftershave, and just very manly. It's a very manly scent, but like a man who is going to go out and, you know, like an English lord. But yeah, it's interesting. I like that one so. And then these next 2 are kind of tied for favorites, but this is the Hatter's Tea Party, and it smells of vanilla cookies and tea, and I really enjoy this one. I like how it smells a lot. And yeah, and their label is just so cute. I don't know how well you can see that. And then the last one, since I got 4, so September, October, November, December, 1 for each month. So I'll have to kind of ration them out. But this is going to be my December candle, and it's Through the Wardrobe. And it smells like winter. It smells like cranberries and spruce trees and snow, which does have a scent to me, but it's so wonderful. And my son, he said this one was his favorite, but he was tied between the Gatsby and this one. But yeah, this just is such a wonderful smell. So it'll probably be December, November, October. We'll have a mad tea party while reading spooky books. And then September has been Gatsby's Mansion. So I just wanted to share these with you. If you love candles in the fall like I do, I know it's not knitting related, but really, you know, you could light one next to you while you're knitting. And I'm really all about creating that like comforting, cozy atmosphere around me when I'm knitting. And so I will have my candles lit, I will have my tea, I will have my knitting, and I will either have like an audiobook or some music. I don't often knit to movies or television or podcasts unless I'm like with my husband. But yeah, this is my enabling for this week. I probably went on way too long about that. I have no idea how long I've been. I should have set a timer. because the book I love, and it's probably going to be a long description of it, but this book is called Empires of Light by Jill Jonnes, and it is Edison, Tesla, Westinghouse, and the Race to Electrify the World. I have talked about this before early on in the podcast, and my love of Tesla and how he makes my heart hurt because he was so brilliant of an inventor, and just he saw things in the future that other people, he was so advanced for his time. But he was a terrible businessman, and he was way too trusting, and other people hurt him, and he ended up, almost penniless, basically penniless, like a pauper, even though he was responsible for giving the world so much. And it always hurts my heart when things like that happen, when you have somebody that is contributing so much and they're taken advantage of by people who just care about money. And it's just really sad. So anything with Tesla in it, I am excited to read about. And I knew a lot about Edison, but I didn't know as much about Westinghouse. And I love learning. I'm a Ravenclaw through and through. But something interesting, I guess I'll talk about something interesting I learned from this book. Edison loved apple pie. And I don't like apple pie. He ate it almost for all his meals. His wife would bring an apple pie up to his working laboratory space, his workspace, which was away from the house, and he would just eat that, and that was like his main staple. And I'm trying to think if I learned anything new about Tesla through this. I learned that he drew the plans for his AC conductor motor in the sand at the beach with a stick with his friend. That was fascinating. And then Westinghouse, I just learned so many new things about him. And I really liked Westinghouse. He believed in what I think are very important principles of paying his workers a really good, he believed in paying his workers really well. He believed in suffering a lot. Like, you weren't going to see him like buying a jet and having no money problems and making so much while he's laying off people and starving and dying. Then his workers, he very much always wanted to pay his workers, and he kind of got in with his men and liked to be in there and liked to support people and liked to, and it's a very good book, and she does a good job. I could go on for like 20 minutes about this book, but I won't. But the book does a very good job of talking about the men individually and telling you new and interesting facts about them, but also telling you about the history of the world and stuff that is happening in this time period. And I learned so much about electricity. I really am used to, in these type of books, where things are kind of dumbed down, kind of with lay language for the person, but there were diagrams of how electricity works and very extensive information on how certain stuff was done. And I really enjoyed that fact. Now, it may have been harder for me because as a person I am not an electrician. I have no knowledge, no extensive knowledge of how this stuff works. And I'm sure too, somebody who has worked for 20 years as an air conditioner, or as an electrician, this would be like basic stuff. But as somebody who has no working knowledge of it, this had a ton of stuff that I learned. And I don't see that in other books that I've read. They don't have, books on architecture stuff don't have as much information things. But yeah, there's diagrams all in it about how different stuff. It talks about the World's Fair. It talks about Niagara Falls. It talks about all kinds of projects and stuff Tesla was working on. And I just really like this writer. I liked her style of writing. I liked how well researched it was. And I loved that she put in quirky little things about each person to where I was able to talk with friends that are historians, and like that is what their PhD is in, and they did not know that Edison loved apple pie, and they're like, oh, that's something new. So I love when I can learn something new from a book that people who are experts in the field didn't even know. So that was just a lot of fun. So this is Empires of Light by Jill Jonnes, and she has another one called Conquering Gotham, and I believe it's about different parts of New York and railway stations, I think. But I have it on my next up to be read really soon, within the next month. And yeah, I really enjoy her writing style. So if you love historical nonfiction that has a really good narrative to where they make the nonfiction almost have a story-like quality, then I would recommend this to you. Now, take into account that I read textbooks for fun, so if you absolutely hate nonfiction, this is not gonna be more. I don't think she's not quite as good as Hampton Sides, but if you haven't heard of her, and I don't think a lot of people have because there's not a lot of reviews for this on Goodreads, and it was very hard for me to find any of her books. They're not kept in bookstores, so I think she's more of an obscure writer, but I enjoyed it. So Jill Jonnes, and she has some other books out, I believe at least one more. So yeah, that is everything I have for these 2 weeks, and I'm just excited for colder weather to come and to use my candles and to finish off shawls and start other things, and just I'm really feeling the knitting mojo return now that I walk outside in the mornings and it feels a little bit chilly. I've been walking my kids up to the school building, making sure they get in the building safe and that I see them enter the building, and all the other moms are like, oh, it's freezing, and I'm like, oh, it's wonderful. So yeah, it's been great. And I didn't talk about this at all at the beginning or anything, but I did find a job, kind of, but I always find it's hard to find jobs that are flexible but pay well and are not full-time. And so the job I have now, I'm sure if I added up, I'm working for like a wedding planner doing like assistant stuff. And I'm sure if you added it up now, I would, because I'm sure I would be making way less than minimum wage with how many hours I'm actually putting in versus what I'm getting paid. But they're very flexible about, like, if I need to go up to my daughter's school for something, it's fine, just as long as I get the stuff done. And I do have to work on weekends and stuff like that now, so I won't be at Stitches, Texas this next weekend because I've got to work. And but yeah, it's been great, you know, having not to worry about money coming in and stuff with that kind of thing, and not having to like, oh, I hope some yarn sells this week. So I don't know if there's anything up in the Etsy shop right now for Open Skies yarn. I have been wanting to dye more yarn, but I've been working, so I haven't really had time to do that. And there were some really awesome jobs that I found. That there was one that I really wanted and I got offered to me, but it was an assistant librarian at one of the schools here, and I really wanted that job and it paid really well, but the hours were not flexible, and I'd have to be there before the school started for a little bit till like a little bit after school, and my children's school does not offer any before or after care at all. It's not an option, and so it just wasn't going to work out. But I don't know if you care to know all that, but we're friends, right? So I just wanted to tell you guys that just in case, because I know some people had written to me asking about how the job stuff was going. So it's going good, but it can improve. So I'm hoping to use this money from my job that I have now to put myself through getting my master's in library science, so I can become a librarian, like an actual official librarian, and that will take me enough of a time span to do that so that my children will be older, and then, you know, it won't be as big of a deal with them being after school kind of stuff. And also being like the actual librarian, head librarian versus an assistant, I would make a lot more money. So anyways, I'm gonna stop myself from talking right now because I'll just jabber on because I haven't spoken to you in 2 weeks. But forgive me, next week I will make sure to like keep it short, sweet. And that is all, and until next 2 weeks, I hope you guys have a lovely time and you get to do all the things you love. Okay, bye guys.